Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Roll Call. Sorry about the little delay there. The thing was held up. But welcome to Roll Call. So, what is Roll Call? Roll Call is at the beginning of each tour. The police officers get together and they get their assignments for the day. And I kind of adapted it to a morning show so that we can catch up on all of the different going ons and happenings in some of the cases that you guys are following. And of course, just like clockwork, there was a breaking news in one of the cases, and we're going to start off with that. And I have with me Dave Sarni. Dave is a retired NYPD detective. He's also an adjunct professor at John Jay College. He's been on our show before. Known Dave for a long time. Dave, thanks for coming on. I know you're busy. You got classes and everything, but thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to talk.
Good. So yeah, I was just introducing everybody to Roll Call and like the famous Hill Street Blues. That's probably about the best example that people can get about what Roll Call really is, right? Be careful out there. I think everyone remembers that, or less, if you're old like us, anyway, Dave, right? So they know that.
Yeah.
So there was actually some breaking news in the true crime world last night, and we're going to start off with that, even though we weren't planning on talking about it because we didn't really know about it till we got up. But Utah team Dylan Rounds, his remains were found not too far from where he disappeared off the ranch from 2022, and the neighbor has been charged. So have you been following this one, Dave?
Yeah, I caught up a little bit on it. It's one of those unfortunate circumstances where this kid is just probably ran into a guy who's squatting on their property, and whatever happened, whatever exchange was made, this guy decided to just kill him. And I don't know what, this is sad. It's a young kid, it's his family's property. He's doing the right thing, doing his job. And the ends he faces on this is just, it's tragic. It's a sad situation.
Yeah, I just put up a photo of Dylan from the New York Post website because this is when I first turned on the internet this morning. This is what I was greeted with, and then I went, "Oh boy, here we go." And the issue that comes down to is a lot of people are upset because this guy Brennan, who has already been in trouble with the law like several times, was also in the possession of guns. And the parents, I think it was the mom, had actually pointed police in his direction, saying that she thought that he was responsible. Some intuition there for sure. And but here's the other issue that we're dealing with. People are upset about the plea deal, right? So they had him cut a deal with this guy in order to recover his remains. But unfortunately, Dave, we know that sometimes that's the way it's got to go.
Yeah, I mean, this is, you wanted to get some closure. You wanted to find the body. And what you're dealing with, it's beyond the police department's plea agreements. We don't do pleas. We actually investigate the case. We forward the information to the DAs, the prosecutors, and they determine whether or not they're going to prosecute. And in this case, they felt it would be best to offer a plea in return to find Dylan.
No, I agree with you. I mean, listen, we know that some of these plea deals, we've been through them in our own cases. They're not pleasant sometimes, and the cops get angry at some of these things too. But unfortunately, in a situation like this, it's already been going on a couple of years. There's a lot of personnel and money being spent on trying to do this. And sometimes I know people say, well, money shouldn't be an excuse, but we know that money is always an excuse. And also you're taking investigators away from other cases, and other things can then spin out of control. What's your take on that part of it?
You're dealing with a 9-month investigation. You most of the stuff is circumstantial at best. You're dealing with an individual that they find things that lead him to that. Whether or not you're going to get the prosecution you want, and when I talk to my students, I always say, you're innocent until proven guilty in a court of law, and we can bring as much evidence to a case. If the prosecutor doesn't believe it's going to be a verdict of guilty, they may look to offer a plea. And in this case, I think that's what was probably best for. Unfortunately, you don't like it legally, you don't like it as a cop, but you're getting some result. There's some benefit. If you consider a benefit, finding the body, he's incarcerated, so you kind of got the best you could of that situation.
All right, so here, even Jill, host of the Murder Shelf podcast, says there's that balance between justice, recovering the remains for the family, and gaining cooperation, devil's compromise. But I get it. Yes, it's something that is definitely in the police realm, things that get us crazy too. I mean, it happens all the time, especially when you have somebody who's a really for lack of a better adjective, bad individual. And then they give him or her a break on top of it, knowing full well that he'll be back out on the street eventually and doing what he does. It's something that really makes people upset for sure.
You see that because our biggest thing is about recidivism now. It's been the big buzzword in the criminal justice world. This guy, Bryan, has been in trouble with the law numerous times before. But it comes down to the fact that if you can't prosecute to the fullest extent of the law, you feel it's the best alternative to at least get something out of it. The prosecutors will do that. You get something.
Yes.
It's better than nothing.
Yeah, I don't think he's going anywhere. Let's put it that way. I don't think he's ever getting out of prison, but I guess there's other things that could have been on the table in order to do this. And this also brings me into a segue for another case, because people are saying, not people saying, but at the time, right? I don't know if you were following the Adam Montgomery trial and the Harmony Montgomery, the little girl who disappeared, and the father was just convicted of this. And I've been saying all along, this is where now the police and the prosecutors can work with him to try to find where the remains of Harmony was. And you know what? It's not a pleasant thing to make a deal with somebody like this, but it does show some results.
I mean, that's what it is. We get to a point where, what are we going to get? What is the benefit? He gets incarcerated. The person gets incarcerated. He gets incarcerated, but we're getting something else, which is, we know he did it. You're finding the remains, and that's what you're looking to do. You don't want to have that. As a detective, we never wanted to see people not get whatever closure they can out of a case. So if this is the best way to do it, you may be angry, you may be upset, but this is the criminal justice system. It takes a lot to prosecute and to convict somebody. So sometimes you do take that alternative route.
Yeah, and most cases are pled out already. I mean, that's just basically the way it goes. Unfortunately, when you have a high-profile cases, I think is when people finally like, what do you mean there's a plea deal in this? But most cases are just, very few cases end up in trial.
Yeah, I sometimes talk to detectives and cops, and I ask, like, how many people go to trial, and there's such a small amount that even go to a trial, let alone a hearing anymore, because a lot of things are either pled out or reduced charges, and the detective or the cop never sees it again. So it's part of the criminal justice process. It takes a lot of resources to prosecute a case. It takes a lot of resources to investigate the case. And sometimes, for the betterment of the justice system in itself, they will take something that they can't prosecute, just go the easiest route and plea it out.
Right. And unfortunately, that's the way it goes sometimes. So for those of us just joining us, we have retired NYPD Detective Dave Sarni. If you remember, please like and subscribe to the channel. That helps me out a lot. And we were just finishing up with the Dylan Rounds case, and his body was recovered. They actually made a deal with the suspect in the case, and they found him. And so that case now, we'll wait to see what happens in trial. Now, Dave, you actually sent me another interesting case. I hadn't heard about it. I'm sure a lot of people haven't heard about it. I'm going to share the screen because this is such a wild case out of Houston that when I was watching it, I had to watch it a couple of times, Dave, because I wasn't comprehending exactly what's going on. Yeah. But we're going to watch this quick video from the New at 5, the Houston Fox local channel.
Tom Ziska, we're glad to have you with us. We begin with a man who was shot and killed while trying to rob someone at a gas station in Northwest Houston. Fox 26's Jade Fleury is live in the newsroom tonight with details. Jade, what do you know?
Tom, officers say the robber walked up to a man while he was pumping gas, pistol whipped him, took his wallet, and then ran away. That's when a bystander who witnessed the whole thing pulled out a gun and shot the suspected robber. Surveillance video shows the moment a robbery suspect approaches a man and assaults him, demanding his belongings. A bystander who saw the assault unfold shot the robber multiple times before taking off. The suspect was pronounced dead at the hospital.
I was just out.
Okay, so before we get into the commentary from the people that they identified, if you just look at this, right, it looks like it's a straight robbery, goes down. Something that we see that happens at gas stations quite often, whether it is about stealing the car, right? People sometimes leave the car running, leave the keys in the ignition, or they leave their cell phones and their pocketbooks, and they do this thing called sliding, right? So as you're pumping gas, they open up your door and they take all your stuff. So if you look at this, right, Dave, just for the casual observer, looks like a straight out robbery.
Yeah, I mean, if you're the investigator, you're getting all of this information. You have the thing in New York City is there's so many few gas stations anymore. This doesn't happen in New York City particularly, but this is something that happens. It is a trend that robberies do take place at gas stations, and it seems like that's what this was, a straight out robbery where an individual, a Samaritan or whoever you want to identify, a bystander, sees this and engages the perpetrator and shoots him.
Right. So now let's watch the rest of it because there's a twist in this.
Outside in front of my apartments, outside smoking a cigarette, and I heard like 2 gunshots go off.
Some people in the area say the bystander had a valid reason to shoot the person accused of robbery, calling him a good Samaritan. Do you think this guy was justified in shooting the robber?
Yeah, I think he was justified. I would justify him. We need more people like that out here, more people to protect us out here like that.
Hell yeah, it's justified because he trying to protect the society. He helping people. He ain't doing nothing wrong.
While others believe the shooting should have never happened.
I can't judge that man. Was he wrong? Probably, most likely, he absolutely was.
There are even conflicting views on whether the shooter should have remained at the scene.
When I seen and heard that he took off after he shot him, I didn't want him to get in no trouble. He's just trying to protect the citizen.
All right, so let's unpack that stuff, Dave, right? So, I like I said to me, here's the thing. When I first saw this, I said, if this was a police officer that shot this guy when he was fleeing, I think the scenario and the justification talk would be totally different because the guy's running away. He's almost got his back turned to him. I don't know if he's pointing the gun at this guy or not. I think that's the thing that actually will change the narrative, so to speak, on that. But I don't know, Dave.
Yeah, this is if you flip it to the point of a law enforcement officer involved shooting, it would have been judged in a different way by the community. It's amazing how the public actually advocates vigilantism as opposed to like he's doing a service for the community. I'm going, wait a minute. This is something out of hand. Granted, what that situation can be, you'll have to obviously investigate it because it seems very straightforward by video concerns, but you're going to look into this a little further. You have a shooter that's just run off. You have now a victim at the car. You have a guy who was shot, who's the perpetrator, and it seems like everything gets wrapped up relatively easily, other than locating the shooter, the right. Samaritan, in a sense.
Yeah, and I think that kind of hurts his case too by him fleeing after the event. Stay at the scene. You do something like this, just stay at the scene, because if not, so let's continue because this story gets weirder and weirder by the minute.
The man that shot the robbery suspect is wanted for questioning. So far, no arrests have been made. Reporting from the newsroom, Jade Fleury, Fox 26 News.
Right. So what happens?
This is pickleball. It's basically tennis.
All right. Sorry about that. So what happens with that? I'm sorry. Hang on. Let me pause the next one. I'm still getting used to this, Dave. So it's apparently this scheme to get immigration visas, right? So these guys are doing these robberies, and then what happens is they're setting people are setting themselves up to get robbed, because if you can get an immigration visa if you can prove that you have a traumatic event, and one of those traumatic events is you're a victim of a crime, and that's the twist in this whole case.
Yeah, it makes Jussie Smollett's whole thing so different that this. And apparently this was going on for an extended period of time. You're doing almost from the other subject involved in this, at least a year. So they've been doing this type of, these fake robberies for over at least a year. And they're doing it in pretty much the same pattern. Gunpoint, gas station robberies. And the victims really aren't victims. They're looking to get their U visa. And this is a way of, to pursue that visa in what they consider a legal way. It's not really the way it goes. It's shocking to the system that you would have put people into the situation. That some people thought this is the best way of getting a visa. How can I get it? Oh, I'll have someone rob me in the street. That's a good way of doing it.
Yeah, and it specifically says, because I looked it up when you sent this to me, I watched it and I read it, and I'm like, there's no way, and I had to keep on going back because I'm saying these guys have a robbery ring. They made it into a business.
Yeah.
Where they are, it's basically what they've done. They contact people who are looking to get these visas. They pretend these fake robberies. They beat them. They do whatever they do with them so that they have this traumatic injury. Because when you read the immigration visa, one of the things is there, that traumatic experience, and one of them is about the victim of a crime. So they make it look so real. No intention of actually, hurting the person per se, but now you have this individual who gets himself involved in it. Now all of a sudden the whole house of cards comes down.
Yeah, and this is a way of clearing a lot of cases. If you're a detective who's got all these gunpoint, these robberies at gas stations, it seems to be it was their business. Yeah, and it's crazy. Like I said, Jesse Smollett with his faking his crimes. You have these people faking crimes, violent crimes, just to get a visa. So you could almost go and create a business. I was like, because there was they found out based on communication. The detectives did a great job. They look into the victims. They do victimologies. They talk to these cooperative individuals, and it come to find out during investigation, these guys know each other. So when they know each other, is what's going on. Further investigation finds out that this is a whole, lead into visa scams.
Right, and they haven't told us the exact number in the cases in the pattern, but I think there might be a reason why they didn't tell us that, because it might be so extensive that people are going to be like, what is going on? But, when you sent this to me, Dave, not only did I thought it was a great topic because nobody's really talking about it, but here's the thing. This is something that needs to go out nationwide, because this might be happening in other locations, specifically down south, where we're seeing a lot of influx of immigrants coming into the country. This might be a pattern of something that they should be looking into. And like yesterday, looking into it, because this is crazy.
Yeah, it's when I saw it, it was surprising, but not surprising, because I know that's you look for fake documents and fake IDs and you get that, but now you could almost legitimize it. Hey, I was robbed. I've seen incidents where you had people lose their passports are robbed from them, or their documents are robbed from them. So once that's there, they can forward that information to immigration and go, listen, I was robbed. I have paperwork on this, and look, can I get that visa now? And government sees this. You have an official police document. You have a detective investigating the case, and this could be again another industry, underground industry started with immigration.
Yep, I'm going to come back to that point in a second. But Mike Alcazar joined in the room, says, "Good morning." Like he's hanging out with the chat for you guys for a change instead of having to come on the show. So, do you remember what for in NYPD, right? We had a policy, but it was actually not really strict until 9/11 happened, and it was about the lost passports, and then all of a sudden it became like this 20-page procedure, if you remember. It was just like you wrote out a complaint report, right, or 61, and that was it. You gave it to the person, and they went down and got their new documents. Right. Now it was like you had to send it to a detective. You had to do. Remember all that changed?
Oh yeah.
And this is what. This is what I would be calling for now in regards to this. This could have national implications on this case, because fraud with immigration status and passports and all this other stuff could lead to a whole host of problems that we don't want. Because once you have those legal documents, boy, if you're a bad actor, you're good to go wherever you want, including airplanes and everything else that goes along with it.
Yeah, I mean, I could even just refer to a case I had when there were 4 individuals who were foreigners who were saying they're sleeping and their passports taken from underneath their pillows. And for about 3 or 4 hours, I spoke to all of them. They kept to the story really good. And doing background, we've seen that type of complaint happening in the past. And the way unfortunately, the job looked at it is we have to take the complaint as is, even though we have no documentation or evidence to refute it. Though I didn't believe a word they were saying, but it's not what I believe. It's not what I think. It's what I can prove. And I always go back to the training day line. You got to prove that they're lying, and they weren't. And this is not unusual. This is not unfortunately unusual, and you're going to see more of it. More fake robberies
with these documents. Yeah, well, like I said, this is something that I'm going to keep an eye on for sure. But so thanks for bringing this one up, because I would have never have caught that one for sure. And for those joining us now, we have retired Detective Dave Sarni with us at Roll Call. We're going through some of the cases that you guys have been following in the news, including ones that we never even heard of until now. We're going to get into the Kansas moms in a second. But I realized I have this Nightbot thing, and I forgot to update it from last night. So you're going to see a couple things from the Dave Fisher thing. So you can, I did the interview last night. So I did 3 shows back to back. I gotta remember to change that. Anyway, Kansas City mom's case is actually turning into a bizarre missing persons case. 2 women, Veronica and Jillian. So Veronica Butler and Jillian Kelly, excuse me. They disappeared on the 30th. They were on their way to Eva, Oklahoma. They disappeared in the Panhandle. Nothing really new, but of course, YouTubers are now getting involved in the case. But before I get into the distractions now, what we're seeing in this case, this is a really remote area, Dave. I know you've worked in plenty of missing persons cases before, but New York City, we always had buildings and stuff around, right? So never in an area. I mean, when you look at this, there's nothing there. You could see for like miles, just dirt. Yeah. No cell phone records, because even the newscasters are having difficulty finding a spot where they can actually broadcast from. And this is with satellites. Yeah. So can you imagine if just a regular cell phone? So investigators are really behind the 8 ball, right? They don't have cell phone tracking, more than likely, with the cell towers. They don't have video surveillance because there's nothing there. This one, and the investigators have said flat out, this is foul play. They haven't told us why. I mean, we could speculate why, but the issue that comes down to is what other kind of obstacles do you think that the investigators have in this thing?
Well, some of the benefits is you have at least the vehicle has been recovered. You have forensic evidence that you may be able to recover from the vehicle. Tracking. Another thing you look at is the vehicle itself, the age. Because sometimes it's almost like a black box in these cars, and you're hoping that maybe somehow she was utilizing some sort of GPS to drive to the area, either on her car or maybe her phone. So maybe whatever records they can get from that, and triangulate a geolocation of where they lost or dropped the spot. You have something, but the problem is that after that you've got nothing. I don't know what they have as far as tire tracks around there that might show that there was another car that was there. Apparently, the Jillian, the passenger, was her friend. She was going to pick up her kids to go to a birthday party. Apparently, there's a custody battle going on between her and the father. And it always comes back to, when I look at the things, why did it happen at this time? Why was the car recovered there and then at that moment? And where do you go from there? There is such, and I feel bad. That's why the good thing that Oklahoma is really doing this is they're not releasing any information. Yeah. Because YouTubers will, and they're already saying they're getting inundated with tips, and you're hearing all of the psychics, and you'll hear I have this idea, I have that idea. They're going to work on the facts that they have available. And then maybe whatever leads they may get from somewhere outside that, they'll work it. But, this is one of those cases that you hope you get a positive result, but I don't think you're going to.
Yeah, you bring up a good point about OBSI, I think it's called. The issue that comes down to is I agree, right? So they've kept everything really close to the vest in this investigation. But the problem is, Dave, we know if you do keep this kind of radio silent, so to speak, you actually encourage the speculation, though, too, because people are going to fill in those gaps. So for the police, it's like this catch-22. In a case like this, I think that it's warranted, because as far as I'm concerned, I believe they're onto something, and they don't want to spook anybody or anything in regards to it. And that's the reason why they've kept everything, because not even the family is talking.
Yeah.
Which to me, right? So, and I tell people, silence is an answer, and it's a very powerful one. And when you're dealing in policing, right, Dave? I mean, you can, if you don't agree with this, you can. But when silence comes out, it usually means that they're onto something, and they don't want to, scare anybody away.
Yeah, I think the only person outside of this was the pastor saying, "We hope we find you." That was it. You haven't heard anything. It's kind of, how NASA did their, and Suffolk County does their thing, and now most of the other. It's a good thing, because it does get the noise out, You're working on something. You don't need that extra noise. So you're going to work on what you have available to lead you to that point. And if they really need the help of the public, they'll reach out. But they've already said, and the spokesman has been very clear, we're doing something. We know this foul play. That's what we're going to say, and we're working on it. So they might have some good leads. They're just not going to say anything right now.
Right. We're going to watch from KSN. This is a short clip that we're going to watch. I'm just going to share the screen here. So hopefully everything goes on. Here we go. So this is about the YouTubers, and I want to, talk about this specifically because we're seeing a lot of people getting involved in some of these things.
The search for Jillian Kelly and Veronica Butler continues. The two were last heard from on March 30th. Julia Thatcher and Peyton Steiner have been talking to people who have come
Look at that
to the
area.
area to help
Yeah,
search.
it's desolate.
Julia.
We are in Boise City, Oklahoma now. Our search today, questioning people about the investigation, what's going on, getting a pulse in the community has brought us to several towns between Kansas and Oklahoma. And there are two themes that have really stuck out today from people we've talked to. First, everyone we've spoken to is familiar with the investigation and familiar with the search for Jillian and Veronica. The two themes, everyone seems to want more answers from law enforcement, any type of details they can release. What's the state of the investigation? They're desperate for those answers. Where are Jillian and Veronica? The second theme is that the search is so difficult because the ground to cover is so spread out. Again, we mentioned we've been between Oklahoma and Kansas. And what you're looking at right now is a search that happened earlier today. Two true crime YouTubers searched this abandoned home. They say someone sent them this tip asking them to check out the property. Those YouTubers say there are a lot of questions from people asking why more isn't being released.
Yes, and before we get into the rest of this video, I have a lot of questions for the YouTubers. If you received a tip, why didn't you go to law enforcement with it? I don't care if they said, we want you guys to do it. First of all, talk about a chance that these people take. How do they know they're not being set up, right? Go to this abandoned house in the middle of nowhere and you're going to find what you're looking for. It's craziness for what people will do for just to get a couple of likes and shares on their video.
People will do very dumb things. There's, a tip that you didn't lead. If you said this is a place, don't call law enforcement. What are you going to do when you get there? What are those two individuals going to do when they get there? And something is there that's heinous. You don't know what this is. Just go there. And I don't know who these people are. You don't know where they're from. You don't even know how the tip came into them. And why did they get a tip that no one else did?
Well, exactly. And that's why we're going to watch the rest of this clip, but we're going to be introduced to the YouTubers. But the issue that comes down to is when I first heard this, is like, they're lucky this wasn't a setup, because look at this place. It's in the middle of nowhere. And also too, they're not wearing gloves. They're touching things in there. What happens if they walk into this thing, like you said, Dave, and they find a body? Yeah. What do we do now? I mean, you're adding more evidence dynamics into this situation, which doesn't need to be. And it's too dangerous. And I don't get it.
Doesn't make sense. It doesn't. It's the new thing now. Now, we hear about that. Just watch the shooting in Houston. You see this vigilantism is becoming a thing. Now they're becoming these super sleuths because I actually have access to social media. I have access to a computer and the internet. Thereby, I know everything. You have no idea. You're putting yourself as a rookie, beyond rookie, into a situation, a firestorm. You have no idea what could be the end result of. You're just doing it because I want to help. You know how you can help? Tell the police about this tip you got. Tell them about this if they know something that we don't know.
PK doesn't agree with me. He says this story would die without YouTubers. Stop picking on these people trying to help. It's not picking on them, PK. This is a dangerous situation that they're putting themselves in, and you're also running the risk of ruining the case and stamping or trampling upon evidence. And that's the reason why I'm bringing it up. People could do whatever they want, but unfortunately, eventually, one of these YouTubers are going to wander into a crime scene. They're going to ruin everything, and they're going to get themselves locked up. And that's exactly what's going to happen. And if you don't think so, just wait. It's going to happen. So let's watch the rest of this video and see what they have to say.
At least they say they do not want to get in the way of law enforcement, but understand the frustration of wanting more answers.
For the public and their families, and we want answers like yesterday. The next day, that's not the way it works. Her and I understand that.
They could be anywhere. And like on this property here, it's abandoned, but there's a well back there. It's not covered. It's pretty big. So I got down in there and looked, because you never know where they could be.
Both of those women say they plan to stay in the area searching for Jillian and Veronica for as long as they can afford. I reached out to Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation earlier today to see if they would be available for an on-camera interview. Again, I was told they are not available for an on-camera interview, and they would let me know when more details can be released. And I did run into an Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation agent at the gas station. That's the first time I've seen the agency's presence in this area. And we'll remind you, originally Oklahoma County deputies found that car, were the first on scene, and contacted OSBI. So they are now handling that investigation. So it wouldn't be uncommon to see them in this area. But again, that's the first time that I've seen agents here investigating, and the first time I really just ran into them kind of by accident. So again, this.
Okay, so I think we've pretty much seen what we had to see on that. But yeah, it's not about picking on people. It's about we didn't have to deal with this, Dave, right? We didn't have to deal with this. Yes, there were the people who would chase the 911 calls over the radio, right? Now they're trying to even stop that.
Yeah.
With the encryption of the radio. But, and at the time it was just like news reporters, right? So, I mean, it was just basically the channel, the local affiliates, 2, 4, 5, 7, 9, and 11, trying to get a scoop on a story, or the Post or the Daily News or the New York Times, not to have people potentially running through crime scenes, with.
I understand the feeling behind it. It's good sentiment, but with good sentiment doesn't come, with the best intention. What would they do when they found that? Or what are they going to do? And, they're putting themselves in possible harm's way. This is absolutely desolate. Who knew they were going there? And if you're having issues with self-service and the like, and something does happen, what are you going to do? That's my concern. You want to have people help, and it's always good to have input. And that's why I have Crime Stoppers. You have all these Crime Stopper tip services. But you're going to a scene. Why are you going there? Because someone told me about it. Who's they? Who's putting you in that scenario? Why would you put yourself in harm's way? Your help can get you hurt, in a sense.
Yeah. And you're actually adding to the issue here. So Rescue Puppy says the lady in the gray is retired law enforcement and is packing. Oklahoma has open gun laws. That's fine, but she should also know better if she's a retired cop. I mean, I've been I don't think I've been to a crime scene yet while I've been doing this stuff. And even if I did, it would be from a distance. And it would be, not to be conducting an investigation or trying to do this kind of stuff, because I understand the consequences of what can happen if you get yourself too deep into it. I'm going to tell you, just a warning for other YouTubers out there. I've seen YouTubers interviewing people when they've had, cases of assaults and of sexual nature and everything else. You got to be careful because of the shield laws and everything else that goes along with it. If you give out the wrong information, like the location where it happened or the person's address, you're going to get sued. I mean, it's just as simple as that. There's so many different things that people are unaware of that just want to make them aware of. That's all.
Yeah. That's all it is. I mean, I say you're helping. That's great. You can help from a distance by not getting in the mix of it too deep, and you don't know. In New York City or New York State, you may be part of the trial if it went to that level, because you've been engaging. If you encountered the victim, you decided to have a conversation with that victim, you become part of it, and you might be more helpful to the defense and the prosecution because of what you do. So, and it's a horrible thing to say, leave it to professionals, but leave it to that understand the importance of crime scene retention, the importance of relaying information to the detectives. Did I get frozen?
Yeah, you're. I can still hear you. Your
okay. I froze a bit. I got to see why I froze a bit. Hold on a second.
That's okay. As you're figuring that out.
When you're doing it's all about just protecting the sanctity of the crime scene, and just you want to help the cops. Help the cops. Help the cops doing this.
Yeah, and like I said, if you are going to do this stuff, if you get a tip, don't go to a remote area by yourself without letting anybody know, including the law enforcement, of that tip. But Mia Beto says she's not a retired cop. She used to investigate wage and labor claims, but she has met with sheriffs, asked permission, and isn't going where people say not to. Okay, that's fine. But that's not really kind of what the news was saying on this, right? About they got a tip and they're running with it. But listen, people are going to do what they want. I'm sure they have their reasons for doing it, but I think you just got to be careful of that. So let's. Are you still with us, Dave? Okay, so we lost Dave. I'm gonna just remove him until he comes up. I'm gonna continue going on. The Jennifer Crumbley case. Jennifer and James Crumbley have been convicted a couple of weeks ago or a month ago, and now yesterday they were sentenced. Each one got sentenced 10 to 15 years. And you have a situation where there's lots of fighting on this online. And people are saying that this is a slippery slope and everything else that has to go along with it. Jersey Jen in the room, Tracy K, welcome, guys. The issue that you're dealing with here is, do you think this was something that was coming for a long time? And what do I mean by that? We have one group that says that this sends a strong message to family members out there, parents, about minding what's going on with your children, including not bringing guns in the house where there is a situation where there's somebody who has some mental health issues. Well, let's just call it that. And then the other side is saying we're going down the slippery slope. We shouldn't hold parents accountable. If you watch this trial, I didn't watch the entire thing, but I watched a lot of it. There was a number of chances of intervention as far as I'm concerned, and I think that's what got them in the legal trouble that they were in. Besides, trying to run away and hide and everything else, that's a whole other issue that we're dealing with. But the issue that really comes down to is, do we see this happening again in other cases? Well, it might. It's not going to happen, as far as I'm concerned, in every case that a child does something heinous, because they have to be able to prove that the parents, as Dave is back, they have to prove they have to prove that the parents knew of some issues and to try to. We were just talking about the Crumbley case, Dave. Yeah.
And I taught high school for years, and you're a parent, and I think every parent knows their kid, and you knew your kid had problems, and you were more concerned about your existence and your lifestyle than you were about your kid. And they told you, the school actually went out and told you there was a problem, and you kind of like blow it off. It's justifiable that they went to trial. It's justifiable that they're arrested and in prison for this. So I'm glad that this happened. We have to parents have to understand these kids are your kids. And you can't say, well, I don't know what he's doing. You got to know what he's doing. I have a son, he's 22 years old. I know pretty much everything. He's 22. When he was 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, I was involved in school. You have to be involved with your kids. And this was bothersome. This kid was pretty much screaming for help. And the school gave them the opportunity to fix it, at least try to fix it. And they just dropped the ball.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that the day the actual event even happened, that they had them in the school, and their excuse was we can't take them out because we have to go back to work. I mean, when you look at the drawings that he was doing on his homework or his test or whatever it was, I forget exactly what it was. Yes, and screaming out for help, apparently a few times, trying to get himself even a mental health. I mean, apparently, according to this, that it came up a number of times, and I guess the jury saw it that this was like a willful disregard of requests and things that they should have done. And here we are, right? And this is where the battle line has been drawn. Listen, there's going to be an appeal, and I even see this case headed to the Supreme Court. I mean, I think that's exactly where this is headed. And I don't know. What do you think about that? You think it goes that far?
I don't know. It maybe is a bit of a stretch. You may think of it as a stretch to get there, but they got a conviction. So they were able to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that these parents were negligent in dealing with their child. And not only that, you bought him a gun. What was the idea to buy this kid a firearm? You were either that naive to think he was okay, or you're just ignorant of the facts that you shouldn't be handing a gun to a kid and saying, go with it. What are you doing? How engaged are you with your kid? Did you teach him anything? You're going to buy him a gun. You're going to teach him how to utilize it. You take him to a range. What are you going to do? You bought him a gun to do what? To do what? This kid comes home, and every kid has had this. Every kid goes through awkward stages. This kid was going through a mental crisis, and your family is there to take care of it. And what are you doing? I'm busy. I work. Everyone works. Everyone does their thing, but it's your kid, and your kid should take precedent over anything. And especially if you're finding out he's been drawing, these drawings are in there. And, far be it also the school. How engaged can the school be in, they tossed his bag, they would have found something. They would have found a gun. I mean, that's
the gun was there in the bag. I know.
It's in the bag. And you're like, the kid's violent. And we've had these active shooter cases, and we see all the precursors of this. And this is one that's, the precursors are there. You could see it coming. And I don't know if it was an abandonment on all sides between the school handing the kid off, or the parents just not taking responsibility. It's a lot of things, and mental health for teenagers now is at a crisis mode. These kids are coming in, and he's not just one. There are probably dozens, if not hundreds, of kids in the same place where they're just deteriorating. Be it social media, be it family life, whatever it is. They're just we really have to put more work into dealing with the mental health of teenagers.
No, definitely. And when the signs are there, you got to do something about it. And like Rescue Puppy writes here, 2 trials, 24 citizens found both parents guilty. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. And it really doesn't matter what opinions I have or anybody else has. The jury has said the prosecution has pulled their case. And I did, before the Jennifer Crumbley trial happened, I guess it was about a month or 2 ago, I was on Court TV. And Julie Grant was the host, and she asked me, she said, Joe, the outcome of this case, what do you think, how this heads? And I said, it's like, you ever see those things on the internet or the social media where it says, say something that you're going to get a lot of hate for, and I did. I said, listen, I look at this case. It doesn't matter if it's if these people get convicted or not, or found guilty, is because I thought it was a win-win. I said, it sends a message that if they're not convicted, it still sends a message to parents. You have to be more involved with your kids. If they find them guilty, this is going to be a wake-up call for a lot of parents who have kids that have issues, right? Not every case, not every kid is going to fall into this category. And this is the kind of argument that I've been trying to tell people. Not every time some kid screws up and does something stupid that the parents are going to get arrested for it. It's not, no, it's not going to be that way. Because people say, well, what about now? They take the car and they're drunk and they drive, and the car is registered to the parents. But that was always the problem. Right? Whoever's the insurance on is the one who gets creamed. If your parents are the registered owner and your parents are the insurance and you're driving the car and you do something reckless, the parents are getting sued on that too. So, I mean, it was always there. And I think it's just that because now we're talking about 10 to 15 years, and quite frankly, they could have gotten off light. All right? They could have gotten 10 or 15 years for each charge. There's 4 kids that got killed.
You furnished the firearm. You furnished the kid the gun. That's the thing. You gave him the gun, and you either thought he was able to handle that, or you did it as just a piecemeal to give him something to do. This is where the trial, you have people convicting him based on beyond a reasonable doubt that these 2 people, these parents, neglected their kid, were told there was a problem, and just kind of brushed it off. And I can understand that you're putting, well, anyone can do this. Yeah, but you're still accountable and responsible. You gave him the opportunity and the weapon that created the deaths of others in the school. That's all you have to look at. You gave him the gun.
Yeah. So it's just something that, so hold on a second. We got Caroline says, this is no kind of wake-up call. What we'll do is make a lot of helicopter parents go nuts, locking, not threatening kids down, while reckless parents continue as is. Well, unfortunately, I guess that's always there is no answer for any of this stuff. But listen, this is a precedent The message has been sent, as far as I'm concerned. Dave and I have nothing to do with that message. This is what two different trials had to deal with.
Yeah. And this is what's going to happen. And it's about, I don't think helicopter parenting. I think that more parental and school involvement. You know, when parent-teacher conferences happened, I went to them, and I'd have to be there. I would get out of maybe a class, I'd have 5 classes. I'd get maybe, if I got 50 parents out of 150, that would be surprising. I mean, not every parent will go to a parent-teacher conference. Not every parent interacts with their teachers, but you need more of it. And I think this is a not just a wake-up call. Maybe you have to look at it as a school. How engaged would be with the parents? Emails, contact every week, something along those lines, because you're not going to have a school shooter every time. But maybe that interaction gets parents involved in saying, you know, my kid's not doing well in school. What can we do about it? Many schools have what's called the individual education plan. And maybe we have to look into this for kids, because, you know, the kid, you could tell, has got problems, huge problems. You know, he's violent at one moment, then he's you know, not at the next. He's putting out these violent photos, he's drawing these violent things. The school is telling you, we're seeing an issue. We should have worked together, as opposed to kind of just handing the ball off to the parents. Maybe guiding them to a particular psychologist, maybe finding another way of handling it. But, you know, this is as a wake-up call as it is. We've seen this happen, unfortunately, way too often. I mean, Sandy Hook is another issue. So you're dealing with these kids, you know, who have real mental health issues, have the opportunity to get firearms. How they get them? Legally, and by parents who just don't pay attention.
Yes, and you know, that's Jessica Frick. Thank you very much for that super sticker. I really appreciate that. Yeah, listen, I mean, this is a powder keg of a conversation, right? So no matter what side of the divide you fall on, you're going to upset somebody. So if you're saying that parents need to be more involved, you're going to have people upset at that. If you're saying that, you know, no matter what you say. So, and you know, Dave and I are kind of used to that, because in policing, same thing. You can't make everybody happy, and it's just something that we're discussing, and you could definitely disagree with us in this thing. But listen, I'm still sticking with my thought that this is going to the Supreme Court, and the highest court in the land is going to weigh on this, because for the exact reasons why we're having this conversation now, there's so many people that disagree with it, that this becomes an issue. Because all you're going to need a couple of more cases where something happens before the Supreme Court will look at it. But you know, once again, the police have to build the case, the prosecutor has to do it, and the jury has to agree. So this is, yeah.
And the judge said, it was reasonable that you took reasonable care, and you did not. And reasonably, people, that's where it comes down to, beyond a reasonable doubt, that these jurors thought that they were negligent in their duties as a parent. And you can fight this, and there'll always be the positive, negative with parents. It comes back to you not over parenting. You know, I watch something, and it's always about being a shepherd. You guide your kids, but you also have to know where your kids are in trouble. And that's where you have to sort of say, how you doing? What's going on? And I don't know the dynamics in that family, but apparently there were a lot of extracurricular activities going on outside of the family circle. But you know, will it go to the Supreme Court? I don't know. I mean, if you're looking at a unanimous decision, a guilty verdict on 2 individuals in 2 separate trials, I don't know if it'll go beyond that. I think it may be a precursor if there's another case like this.
Yeah, there's going to be more it's got to be more cases. They're not going to, the Supreme Court's not going to weigh in on one case. Because first of all, you're going to have the appeal. Then the appeal might go to the Supreme Court of Michigan. And then after that, then it gets in the mix. But the Supreme Court isn't going to look at one incident per se. If this happens again, and remember, I think the topic of it, the issue of it being a school shooting, seems to be the driving force maybe behind this, right? Mm-hmm. This isn't any other crime. This is a school shooting that we know we have a huge problem in this country. And what we do is after action reports, we find out there were chances of intervention. There were chances of some of these could have been stopped. And I think that's the reason why we ended up in court in this case to begin with.
Yeah. Yeah. The precursors. And I think we talk about active shooters, and you're talking about the precursors. It's not just one thing. It's a litany. It's a cluster of things. And this kid hit all the clusters. And it just seemed that, as it always is, the school handed it to the parents. The parents either didn't know what to do or negligent in the fact to do something. But the school did what they thought was reasonable to talk to the parents. The parents, what they did when they were talked to, decided this wasn't a big enough issue to them. And unfortunately, you have deaths of kids in a school. You had an a school shooting as a result of this kid's manic issues, his psychological damage that he's been going through, whether natural or not, you know.
Well, like I said, it's no matter what side of the divide you fall on, it's here. It happened. So fighting over it, especially on the internet with strangers, is not going to help the cause. It's not going to get your point across because the jury has already decided. So it's there.
Yeah.
It's done. It's like it's nothing that we have any control over.
And the police gave them the case. The prosecutors thought they prosecuted. There you go. They had the discretion not to. They decided they had enough to go with this, and that's where you have it. Just like in the beginning, not every case goes to trial. This had enough information in it that the prosecutor thought that the detectives had enough, the investigation had enough to show that these people are involved. They were part of the involuntary manslaughter of these kids.
Yeah, I like to know how that actually even came about, right? Because you had this situation where they investigated the incident. They arrested this kid. He actually takes a plea of guilty in this whole thing. Like, what happened then, right? What made the case go further? I think that is the question that nobody's asking in regards to why we're dealing with it. Like, what was the impetus behind, hey, let's start looking into the parents, or let's start looking into the background on this? And was there opportunities with it? Did they uncover? I guess they uncovered things during the investigation when they were doing their interviews that led them to probably sit down with the district attorney and say, "Listen, we spoke to, these people, and this is what we found.
Yeah.
What do you think?"
I think the firearm was a big way of bringing that cascading toward the parents. He had the gun. The gun was purchased by the father, and now you're looking at everybody going, "Wait a minute, why does this kid have a gun?" Let's talk. Then they find out the school told them about this kid. And all of a sudden you give him a gun, he's got a gun available to him. And there had to be, and there may be someone who's an advocate to this way, who believes in, the parent, there's accountability aspect to it. And there was enough to get a conviction on both of them.
Yeah. And Papa Mike brings up a good point. He says, how many parents have asked for help with a troubled kid and none was available? Yeah, this is something else that has to be weighed. Because we've heard cases where people have tried to get their kid help and they've been turned away not only by the schools but the system and everything else, and we've seen the system fail, Dave, many times.
I have a token child, a juvenile like that. Started out as doing robberies. He's locked up. He's 15 years old. Then he turns 16. He smacks his mother. His mother doesn't know what to do. We have no outlet for him. The school isn't doing anything about it. Next thing you know, within a few years, he gets involved in a homicide. He shoots somebody. And I saw the anger in this kid. And law enforcement we have only abilities to do one aspect to it. The parent was reaching out, and family court didn't have enough other than giving her a PINS warrant. A person needed a supervision warrant. That's all they could do. And this kid needed psychological help. And deep psychological help. And are there the resources available to the schools? Are there the resources available to the parents to do this? And this is why I talk about the communication between parents and school, that if there is a problem, they have to start looking at the mental health of these kids. Because it seems to be, unfortunately, this may not be the last time we see a school shooting of a kid in a psychological episode.
Yeah, unfortunately, right? I mean, we know it's just sometimes you just sit back and you're waiting for the next one. We have a few minutes left. Talk about controversial. We'll be getting the hate mail in the what do you call it for that one later on. But it is what it is, right? So I'm already prepared for it. I was getting it on Twitter yesterday, and all I had to put is the Crumbleys were found guilty, and I said, remember the victims, and I named the kids that were killed. And oh boy, what a storm that caused! And it wasn't even intentional. I wasn't trying to poke the bear, but sometimes bear is just going to come for you anyway. The last one, I didn't have this on the list, I don't think, or I added it late. This Bryan Kohberger case from Idaho is getting weirder and weirder by the moment, right? I had invited Bob Motta to come on. It's early because he's got a, what do you call it? But we have a situation where the defense is trying to have the case removed from the Moscow, Idaho situation, right? Have a venue change. So they hired a consultant who then went out and basically muddied the jury pool as far as the district attorney has said, right? So we said that the jury's tainted, so we're going to go out and we're going to see if it's tainted by asking them leading questions and tainted. And you got to see these questions, right? So here are the questions. Says Thompson, who was the district attorney. This is from ABC Channel 13. Thompson said a resident contacted his office about some of the questions received during the phone survey, including, have you read, seen, or heard that Bryan Kohberger was arrested at his parents' home in Pennsylvania? Have you read, seen, or heard if the police found the knife sheath on the bed next to one of the victims? Have you read, seen, or heard that the DNA found in the knife sheath was later matched to Bryan Kohberger? Right? Talk about a leading question there. Have you read, seen, or heard if the university students in Moscow, Idaho, and their parents lived in fear until Bryan Kohberger was arrested? Have you read, seen, or heard that Bryan Kohberger stalked one of the victims? All right, so wow, talk about some serious lines of questioning there. I guess the biggest one for me was the question about the DNA on the sheath, and that kind of stuff, because some people might not have heard about it, and now they have.
Yeah, I think you could attest to this too. When defense attorneys have very little to go on, they're going to go attack the evidence and attack a particular way. When you look at this and from an outsider's view, you see a way of actually creating a mistrial. You're looking maybe a mistrial in general, because now you've tainted a jury. They know they want to change a venue. But what you're doing is also you're creating an appeal already, and you might be just appealing because now my jury's tainted. No matter where I go now, they're tainted. I can't this can't be a true prosecution. It cannot be a true trial because the jury's already been biased.
But here's the other issue, though, Dave. There's a gag order on this. Why is anybody talking about any of the things in the case?
That's why I love Judge, because I think that's the greatest thing is Judge Squared.
Yes.
Judge Squared. And you're listening to this and you're watching this. I was watching between the attorneys, and you're like, what are we doing? This is about the trial. This is about it looks like there was something on South Park years ago, and I always stick to this, called the Chewbacca defense, which I think is the greatest line. If you haven't heard it, it's always...
Okay, I've never heard it. I haven't watched it. Good.
You talk about everything but the case. And it was an episode where they used Johnny Cochran's caricature, and they're talking about a trial, and they talk about it was actually a trial about copyright infringement, and then they talk about Chewbacca the Wookiee, and it's like, how does this fit into the case? If you don't believe Chewbacca is from Tatooine, don't believe the case. So you talk about everything but what's going on, and it seems to be what the defense is doing everything but the case. They want to do this whole circumventing the system, say we had no responsibility, but you hired this judge, this judicial doctor who does all these, like, he's like Bull they used to be on Channel 2. This Bull guy who's going to taint this is tainting the jury. You've created your own reality where now the jury can be tainted. So let's move. And now the prosecution's heated because that's what we wanted to do. We wanted to keep it in the jurisdiction where this took place. So it's a great way the defense attorney's doing it, because they're going to play, I don't know what he was doing. I didn't tell him to do that, but you hired him. So there's an expectation. You have some understanding of what they're doing.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. So yeah, they fought this out in court yesterday. The judge wasn't happy. Of course, the prosecutor's not happy, and the defense is just playing. I don't know what happened. I mean, it's just it's just basically, I'm not happy. You're not happy. What happened? That's basically.
Listening to her, and you're like going, how? You gotta. She's like, I don't know what happened. What do you mean you don't know what happened? You hired this. Yeah. You knew what they were going to do. You didn't know I didn't know the questions. But what do you think the questions are coming from? Oh, we're coming from the public purview. Maybe not. Some people do live under a rock in a sense where they're not hearing everything. Now you've just told everybody everything about the case.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how that all plays out. But this is why I'm a firm believer in having these things televised too, right? This thing would not have gotten out if it was not for being able to record this in the court, as I said. So I mean, we know New York, they don't allow cameras in the courtroom, and I wish they did, especially with the Rex Uriman case coming up. I mean, I think the cameras in the court, because you hear things like this and you just want to just kind of scratch your head and say, what's going on here?
Yeah.
Dave, that hour went by pretty quick.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us again. We'll have you on again if you're available.
Absolutely.
You have a great day at work, and I'm glad you wake up. You can hang out there for a second. I'm going to say goodbye to everybody. Listen, everybody, this week I'm going to be in the Hamptons Who Done It. So we're going to be with Cheryl McCollum, Joe Scott Morgan, and Barbara Butcher, and everybody else out there. So you can watch for some short videos and stuff like that I will be discussing it out from the Hamptons. And if you're out there, you could do that. For those of you that disagree with us, that's fine. You're allowed to disagree. So don't stop. Just like I said, just be respectful and civil, and we'll definitely take your point up. So Dave, you hang out 1 second. Everybody else, have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye now.